We're here. Hey, you're going to be in a great session or a disaster. So we'll see which one it is as we go along. I am now live. We want to thank PDMA and Carnegie Mellon for sponsoring Product Camp Pittsburgh. I am Steve Johnson. I come from Virginia, and I have been at all of the product camps so far in Pittsburgh, and I'm glad to come with you again. Um, we're going to have a interesting and perhaps disastrous session together. So I think it's going to be grand. Um, what we're going to do is I'm doing this whole thing in Mentimeter. If you don't know what that is, you'll see it in just a second. And you're going to need your phone or a different computer or a different screen for going through this. So open up a window or get a phone because we're going to talk about product management, education, and certification. A little bit about me. I majored in marketing and minored in computer science, which made me unemployable. You could either do computers or marketing, but nobody was doing both. And yet, in a marketing major, I learned to be a brand manager. As we learned from Greg this morning, the brand manager was created these many years ago, and I'm proud and yeah, I'm proud to have been gotten. To have been gotten. I am proud to have received from Greg's organization the ceremonial coin for product leaders for the five number thing that the number is fading on me. 51331, I think. um, anyway, la la la. So I learned to be a brand manager, and then when an opening came along, I moved into product management. And soon after, a buddy of mine started Pragmatic Marketing and became a trainer of product managers. And then a few years ago, started my own organization. And guess what? I product manage my own company. So, and Cassandra repeats, it's 51331, which may or may not have been what I said. So we're going to do some surveying and talk about the results here. So go to your phone or go to your other window and go to menti.com. I'm reading the top line of the slide here, menti.com, and use the code 6766157. That's all on the top of your screen. And tell me where you're coming from. I want to get a PM role. I'm in a PM role. I hire product managers, or I'm just curious about certification, so I'm hanging out. So, which one are you? Answer that through your phone at menti.com. So, this is a pretty cool way to do dot voting for those of you who organize committees. I mean, organize product camps. Um, pretty anyway, dot voting is cool. So we've had 18 people vote. Predominantly look like people want to get into a PM role. A few people in the role, not yet any hiring managers, and four people who seem to have wandered into the wrong meeting. Okay, I'll just give it a couple of more seconds to finish voting. Okay, so cool. So now I know a little bit of who we're talking to. And I'm actually going to crosshatch this information with another question down the road. So let's start with our first question here. Where do you go for help? This is a type in just words. Where do you go for help on product management? Um, think of companies, people, websites. Where do you go for help on product management? Greg Katikia would be a good answer. Oh, come on. Nobody? There we go. PDMA, good. Communities, coworkers, somebody else. I've got some people in the chat stream here. We should put that over there. Cool. I wonder if we have the entire PDMA organization here. Well done, guys. One of the questions as a product marketing person when you're interviewing for personas is to know, where do they go for information? How do I access them, right? How do I learn more about them? Looks like for the product managers, particularly younger ones, um, books, websites, internet, product hunt, good site, yeah. Pragmatic, thank you for that. Cracking the PM interview, yes, that's good. Mind the product, super. Um, Interesting. I kind of thought books were dead, but no, they're not. And you can buy my book. Okay. Cool. 26 people voted. Oh, great. I got a couple of votes for Steve Johnson. Well done. That makes me feel good. Thank you. Um, so, I don't see university, but we'll come back to that. So, one more just open-ended question. Who are the big names when you think, wow, product management education? Who are the big names? Greg Katikia. Who else? Who are the big names in product management education? Thank you again, PDMA. You're good for playing. Carnegie Mellon, good answer. Pragmatic, good answer. Good answers there. It's funny. We've got CMU and Carnegie Mellon. We've got pragmatic marketing and pragmatic. It's kind of Sarah's right. We do need some Jeopardy music here. I could sing it, but that would be wrong. Uh, Great. And it's funny. I've been blogging first for pragmatic marketing back starting in 1999. And then, like every 2 or 3 years, my blog gets blown up as we move to another hosting service, or I moved to another company. I was at Pragmatic for 15 years and then started my own thing. So, yet another blog, and I've broken all those incoming links a couple of times. Uh, but so anyway, lots of good resources there. Pragmatic Institute, well done. I'm still getting used to calling it that. So Pragmatic bought a data mining company, and the marketing part didn't seem to work anymore. So they're now an institute. Okay, cool. All right. Final open-ended question here is, when you think about your current level of product management education, which of the following have you participated in? University, paid seminars like Pragmatic or 280 Group, pay on demand, recorded classes like the ones you find on LinkedIn, free sessions such as this one here at Product Camp, or others, which you can post in the chat. And I believe you can vote more than once if you want to. I'm not sure of that. I forgot how I set that up. I've been doing product camps since the very first one, and aren't they great? Lots of good information for free. Yeah, I've heard Dan Olson's workshop, Dan. I've heard Dan Olson's workshop is excellent. I would consider that a paid seminar. Okay, look at that. Free sessions got the most votes, followed by university courses, which, given the folks who are on this session, that certainly makes sense. Any other notes? Employer sponsored trainings. Good one, Caitlin. Thank you for that. Okay. So, for those of you who have had these free sessions, or you've had paid sessions, or you've had university courses, what has it provided you? So, you went through it. What'd you get? Open ended word cloud. If you're struggling for an answer, how many of people got in inspiration? Ooh, there's some good words in here, aren't there? Frameworks, methods, toolkit. But wow, structure certainly seems to be the big winner. And not to say anything against undergrad, but most of the jobs I've had in my career were never mentioned in any of my career counseling in college. Um, no one in college has ever talked about sales engineering. They've never talked about even product management, much less product marketing. Happily, some universities like Carnegie Mellon are waking up to that, but uh, the work that I've encountered as a vendor and as a corporate IT person are all for things that you never heard of, or I never heard of in university. So good stuff here. Framework, structure, networking, toolkit, templates, um, somewhere a broader view. I saw. Um, we're asking an awful lot of our product management education, aren't we? And yes, I'll agree with Ron Johnson, who says, and an interest in product management as a career. Okay, good ones, good ones. I'm hopeful that the courseware that you're receiving is whether if you're already a product manager or want to be a product manager, that you are getting current methods, innovation as a kind of a daily part. uh, uh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't look at the chat while I'm talking. I'm a guy. I cannot multitask. I like, bigger perspective, but embracing innovation as part of product management, I think, is brilliant. And the tools of product management are around, understanding how to work with clients, understanding how to work with dev teams and marketing teams, being the, if you've seen some of my other presentations, the real goal for product management is to be the one voice of the market, the expert on the market. Salespeople love them, but salespeople are expert on the customer they're working right now, and they have no memory of any other customer prior. Um, Product marketing, or no, I'm sorry, a lot of marketing organizations are more focused on campaigns than they are on markets and personas. So, um, becoming that market expert and using structure and um, toolkits and templates and reference materials to drive that information into the organization is brilliant. And by the way, Martina, what I'm doing is sharing a Mentimeter poll. And so the Mentimeter is doing the real-time updates to these word clouds. It's not PowerPoint. I'm just sharing. I imported a couple of PowerPoint slides into my Mentimeter. And just for the rest of you, because this is kind of cute, every other week I'm hosting a family trivia game that I put together using Mentimeter. And I don't work for Mentimeter. I just think it's brilliant. Okay, so ask me anything. So I've got a question in queue here. Let me go look at it. Um, okay, I'm gonna not answer this question. I'm gonna let you answer it first. But I do have a question here about my opinion on the industry visibility of certifications, and I want to drill down on that idea in I think the next question. So we'll come back to that. And Vinayak, if I have not solved that, if I haven't talked about it, then we'll come back to that. Any other questions? Okay, I'll go to the next question, which may be the one that I'm hoping for. Okay, this one gets fun. Okay, which outside of college, outside of university, what certifications do you have today? And this is going to be tricky because I know some of you don't have certification because you're still in school. Seriously? No one has any certifications, or you're still thinking? There we go. Good point, Danny. I understand. Okay, we've got some pragmatic, we've got some agile, we've got some 280 group, and I know we've got some PDMA people out here. So I would think you guys would be certified in PDMA. But you know what? There are lots of choices, aren't there? There's pragmatic, and they have certification for each of their courses. I know that 280 Group works closely with AIPMM with their certification. Scrum, in particular, is you. There's so many certifying agencies now. Pretty much anybody can be a Scrum teacher with some certification, and then offer certification. So there's lots of good stuff out there that, for those of you who are in my last session, if you think about the aspect of systems or methods, being uh, uh, having some of these certifications could be a differentiator. I know I have seen cases where job postings request have a preference, a preference for, product pragmatic knowledge preferred, or agile preferred, or scrum preferred. And in the case of like safe, I mean, if a company is implementing safe, which they don't have here on the list, you pretty much have to go through the safe course to have any idea what the hell's going on with safe. So anyway, let's see. I have one more question, I think. Oh no, I have two more. Okay. So when you think about certification, what should it really do? Should it quiz me on key topics? Should it show command of concepts, or should it prove application of the concepts? For those of you who have ever been trainers, like doing sales training or well, any sort of training, quizzes are easy to execute and easy to score, and could be, at least you had a command of the ideas. But as we see here, most of us say it should actually go beyond a quiz. It should be more uh, detailed than that. And I think ideally, some of the certifying agencies are now saying, okay, not only have you passed our exam, which is step one logically, we want to see contribution. It's like, have you used these methods to do something different in your work life? Um, so I'm not so in the command of concepts, I think, is, well, hang on, let me go sideways. uh, an article I read recently delineated between an associate and a product manager, an associate product manager versus a real product manager. And the delineation they called out is that a associate product manager cannot do all the work without supervision, without guidance, whereas a product manager theoretically can do all the work without supervision or an advisor. Which means, an associate could very likely pass a quiz on key topics, um, but able to show command of concepts for a subset. And ultimately, as we think about certification or certifying agencies going forward, um, you I think we really want to be able to see this person has done something. They have followed these methods, they've implemented these methods, they've extended these methods in their work environment, and can prove it through a case study or an example, a portfolio artifacts. All right, final question, I think. I have no idea how many questions. Since I'm using Mentimeter, I can't see what's coming next, whereas in PowerPoint, I can always see what the next slide is. So this may or may not be the last question. So anyway, so in your opinion, are certifications necessary for getting a job, helpful for getting an interview, or not particularly valuable? Or is this just not working? Are you voting? People are voting. I'm gonna stop this maybe and change the question and see what happens. Here we go. Apparently that thing didn't work. And so you can now vote again, vote some more if you didn't get your vote in. Um, what I was interested to see that I apparently cannot see was to see if there was a difference between the person looking for the job versus the person, the hiring manager versus the one being hired. Holly, the polls are at 67 at the URL at the top of the slide, menti.com, and then use the code shown there. All right, so a couple of you say they're necessary for getting the job. Most of you say it's helpful for getting the interview. And some of you are don't feel they're particularly valuable. And I struggle with that answer. I think that certifications probably, I would agree with the helpful answer. And here's why. Certifications is one way to differentiate everybody. As a hiring manager, I post for a product management position and I get 150 resumes. If I don't get 1,000 resumes, and I've got someone has to go through and eliminate people who are absolutely not qualified. Like, um, well, I don't theoretically, as we saw in my last session, theoretically, the hiring manager has some hiring criteria, and if they and well, do it this way. I went to a recruiter. I've used a few recruiters, and I work with one up in Pennsylvania who's just brilliant. Her name is Karen Wudashek. Um, and other than her, almost every recruiter I've used has apparently not looked at the job posting, but they say, "Oh, you're looking for a product manager." So they promptly send me 10 resumes for project managers and 4 resumes for dev managers and 16 resumes for QA managers because apparently the only word they saw was manager. And I mean this in a loving, giving way. LinkedIn isn't much better. I mean, I'm watching for certain titles and I'm getting weird things that have nothing to do with the titles that I'm searching for. So, as opposed to Google, it seems that recruiters and a lot of job posting sites say more answers is more better. And as a hiring manager, actually, fewer answers is better. I mean, I only wanted to look at a few resumes seriously. So, I will say, in particular, if you're in a crowded space, having one or more of these certifications definitely differentiates yourself from all the other resumes that are on my desk. But that said, I agree as well with the two of you who said, "Oh, I disagree." Well, it doesn't matter who I agree with. I don't believe I've seen cases where people were chosen because of their certification, but it got you in the funnel. The story I told in the last session was you're a product and the hiring manager is the buyer of your product. The buying manager has a problem that you can solve. So certification is one way that I can quickly filter out people who haven't got certification. If I come down to two candidates that I want to talk to, one has certification, one doesn't, I'm likely to choose the one with certification. But if I only have two resumes, I'll probably look at both of them. Now, the issue is when I have 50 resumes and I have to skim through and I go, all right, let me pick some MBAs, let me pick some people who are pragmatic certified, let me pick some people who are in PDMA. I look for a filtering mechanism. All right, so here we're going to ask me anything, and this is tricky in the tool I'm using with Mentimeter because I can't see the questions until I look at them. Um, okay, good point. So here's a question on how do you determine the value of paying for certification before moving into a career? And remember, this is just my opinion. I did love April's talk this morning. The number of times she said, "Well, this is just my opinion, but," and then she said something, brilliant. So get ready. I'm not going to do that. But personally, I feel like, if you're looking at, yeah, I'll just say it. If you're looking at, a master's degree, I hope that your company is going to do some sharing on tuition. If you're looking at signing up for one of the expensive courses, paid seminars, I hope that your employer is going to pay for it. One of the things that the folks at Quartz are trying to do is create an affordable certification that doesn't require you to take a whole bunch of courseware in order to pass the exam. So at the end here, I'll have a link to to sign up to get more information about Quartz. I'm going to mark that as answered. There we go. Next question. What would you suggest after if you're re-entering the workforce after a 2-year career break? I don't think 2 years is a long time. I will say that if it wasn't there before, it's here now. Everybody is agile, and so knowing the mechanics of Scrum in particular is good for your resume. So getting Scrum certified would be good. At least reading the books, the literature on Scrum, and being conversant in the language of Scrum. And yet, what's funny is Scrum is really, the way it's applied today, a development methodology. It's not really a product management methodology. I would also want you to be, in terms of like project management skills, I'd expect you to know something about Kanban. But um, there are so many good books on the product management profession, the state of it today. I would recommend reading. Becoming conversant in the language of today, which means Melissa Perry's book, um, Avoiding the Build Trap. That means Marty Kagan's book, Inspired version 2. It means Turn Ideas into Products by Steve Johnson, which is the mechanics of product management, available on Amazon. Um, if you've got the ability to take a 280 course, a sequent course, a pragmatic course, that's at least, the first day course, would be helpful just to kind of re-engage your mind. But in terms of education and certification, if you're using your own money, I encourage you to leverage books. If you're using somebody else's money, there are lots of good courses out there, and pretty much any of the ones I've mentioned, any of the ones that were on the certification page, would be good sources. Oh, ouch! Tricky question. Good one. What is the value? And I think the value is that you've at least engaged in a product management curriculum enough to actually know what product management is. And the reality is there's a lot of common sense in product management, um, but common sense is not so common. And also there's a nomenclature, there's a language to product management, like talking about requirements and stories, and what is this persona thing that we keep hearing about, and what's the difference between a buyer persona and a user persona. So there's a lot of taxonomy that's necessary to understand in order to do the work of product management, and you'll learn that from a certification, from a training course or an educational path. And then merely I shouldn't have said merely, but certification just is evidence that you've gone through one of these courses. Or I don't know how they differentiate from one to another. I will say that there's generally Like in the case of Scrum, I believe I may be wrong here, but it seems like there are lots of Scrum providers, but they all use the same Scrum exam engine. I know that's true with SAFe, that learning the SAFe method you can learn in myriad ways, but you always use the SAFe certification exam engine. Um, in the case of the training vendors, their certification is primarily on uh, their application of product management. So it's not necessarily just the well, I think I answered this earlier, but let me restate it very quickly. Do you recommend getting these certifications beforehand or get the company to pay? And when in doubt, always get the company to pay. So there are going to be cases perhaps where you find the client, the company says we have a preference, and you say, well, they don't have that. They're not going to say, well, go take the course and come back. They're going to say, well, we'll get you trained once you start. So it's a fairly common onboarding technique to say, welcome aboard, go take a class. So I'll consider that answered. Oh, good question. Do you typically focus more on their titles or their duties? And does that relate to certification as well? I'll tell you, titles are a mess. What one company calls was identifying markets, identifying problems, articulating those problems in the form of requirements, doing business planning. I'm like, I think you guys are talking about product management. But what's, as I said earlier, or maybe in the other session, a lot of product managers have been turned into product owners, have been turned into secretaries to development. So, we're now doing the role of reading aloud from JIRA as opposed to representing the market. Um, but titles are tremendously unhelpful. So, what you really need to do when you are talking to a candidate, either you're talking to a hiring manager or you're talking to a potential employee, is to get past the title to what kind of work do you do? And those of you who have known me for a while, I'm pretty well known for being associated with the pragmatic marketing framework. Each of the training vendors has their own framework, but you should be able to say, um, these are the boxes that I have expertise in. I'm an expert in buyers rather than users. I'm an expert in requirements and use scenarios as opposed to positioning and launch plans. So you should be able to articulate the activities that you can do or the outcomes you can drive, not just titles. Because titles, in a recent survey, we asked, "What is your title?" and got 167 answers of people who were doing product management, but with different titles. So focus on the work to be done or the jobs to be done rather than the title that's employed. Interesting question. I'm trying to move up in product management. Do you think it's best to pay for the certification myself and tell my employer after and show I took the initiative or ask them to pay for it before? Frankly, I'm a big believer in companies paying for stuff like this. If you're in product management, taking a course on the company's nickel makes sense. If you're trying to get into product management, you may feel the need to say, well, I'm going to pay for this myself as part of my own grooming. But I'm actually hard pressed to recommend someone spend 1,000, 1,500, $2,000 to take a course on the hopes of getting a job in product management. So I'm a big believer in transparency. I suggest you sit down with your boss and say, I want to excel at this company. Um, I'd like to go get this certification so I can continue my professional journey. And I hope that your boss will say, hey, thanks for showing initiative. And I will say, I was working with a team, and I won't say who because of what I'm going to say next. There were 40 product managers, and the boss said, I will give you a day off if you will go to product camp on Saturday. I know it's your regular day off, but I'll give you Friday off if you'll do Saturday. Not one person on his team chose to go to product camp, which shows an incredible lack of interest in product management as a profession. So, talking with your boss about, I want to do well in this profession and I want certification to get there, can only be to the good. Mm. Okay, I've worked at a bank, which was more functional and business oriented than technical. I've also missed on the move to Agile what certifications would be helpful. I would argue in favor of Scrum. 90% of dev teams are doing Scrum either for real or pretending. A lot of Unfortunately, there are many Scrum organizations, dev teams that are doing Scrum based waterfalls. They're still doing waterfall. They're just doing it in 2 week increments, and then they're standing up once in a while. So, but yeah, I would say for a product manager, you've got the technical background. If you're seeing jobs that require more technical background, then being conversant in Agile is the way to go. So I would get a certified product owner certification. And there's an organization I work with in North Carolina called Applied Frameworks. They do on-demand courses for certified product owner, and they it seems what I've seen is seems really sharp. I mean, in some cases, well, anyway, so there are on-demand courses on Scrum product owner in Scrum. There are also instructor-led courses. Um, and that would be my recommendation. Um, okay, now I've got questions coming in two places. This is kind of interesting. Andrea asks, I already have my MBA in strategy and want to add competence in product design and development. Is there a post grad certification? I would say, surely there's master's degree in computer science or data science. I don't know what design stuff is available at the university level. And I think that design is a critical skill. I also believe it is not a product management function. It's a different skill set. It's a different mindset. Product managers primarily need to be business people who know how to communicate to technical teams about problems they've seen and the personas who have them. In many organizations, the product owner is not actually doing product management. They're actually doing UX design and project management. So it would certainly not hurt any of us to know more about design. There are many books to choose from, but I would certainly choose, if you haven't read it, Donald Norman's Design of Everyday Things is a brilliant book. Um, how do you become more strategic? I would say that the master's level courses, the stuff that we teach in university is going to be more focused on strategy than I think most paid seminars are more focused on the mechanics and the tactics. Um, to me, strategy is looking at an empty canvas and saying, we've identified these problems. Hang on. We've identified these problems. What's the best way to solve them? Um, Everybody wants to be strategic, but it's almost like you have to be able to look at a blank canvas and envision something. And so the techniques that we use, say in road mapping, look at the delta between what is available in the market today and what could be available if we applied some technology to it. So in summary, I think the education might be something that you really need to get at the university level or through hands-on experience, just doing, facilitation in those strategic meetings. And if you're in a company today, just try to get in those meetings. When we're talking about positioning, or we're talking about what markets we want to serve, or we're talking about what products we want to build, if you can participate, you can learn by doing. Oh, and by the way, on the job training is probably the most common way we learn to do product management. All right, no more questions over here. Let me quote from Malcolm X: "Education is our passport to the future. Tomorrow belongs to the people who prepare for it today." There's so many great educational opportunities from university, from paid companies like Pragmatic and Sequent and 280. There are a lot of coaches available today that were not available even 10 years ago. And that's certainly where my company focus. We focus on guiding a team through every step of the go to market process, from idea to market, and do the work with you as opposed to telling you how to do it. Let's do it together. Um, Education is